Oh boy, another generation of Pokemon is here. After... What? Already? Well, here we go. I've been playing Pokemon for what feels like a lifetime. Starting from Generation 1, I've played all the mainline games up to Gen 7, and countless spin-offs. Ranger, Mystery Dungeon, that weird Fitbit that came with Heart Gold, you name it, I've played it. Pokemon was my go-to game, always a safe pick, but then that mentality was finally broken with the release of Generation 8. Not that this video is going to be about Generation 8, exactly, but instead a piece of info to explain where my mind was at going into Pokemon Scarlet. My expectations were very low. I regretfully no longer thought Pokemon could invoke the feelings in me it used to. So does the game scratch that itch on a spot I've long thought dulled? Well, it's complicated. Join me as I make sense of this experience in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet! The game opens up with the player waking up at home and getting ready to head off to your new Pokemon school, as you've just moved to the region. The headmaster shows up to welcome you to the school and give you your starter Pokemon. Next up, Nimona, your rival and neighbor for this game, shows up revealing she's already a champion of this region, and she wants to pick a starter too, in hopes of helping you to learn about the world of Pokemon and to grow. Then, a bit of running to a lighthouse where you meet your traversal partner Pokemon. For me, this was Koraidon. It's injured, you give it a sandwich, and it helps you explore a cave. This effort, however, tuckers it out. Then you meet Arvin, another older student who owns Koraidon's Pokeball, and gives it to you, seemingly rather unfond of the beast. Then, it is up to the player to get to your school and start your journey. This game consists of 3 main quest lines, given to the player about an hour and a half into play. These quest lines are Victory Road, Starfall Street, and Path of Legends. In the past, the first 2 are your standard Pokemon fare. You fight gyms and the antagonistic team of the region. Path of Legends is more like Totem Quests in Generation 7, a welcome return from face value. Once you're given these quests, the game leads you to believe you can tackle these things in any order you desire. But how true is that really? Let's find out! Victory Road tasks you with following in the footsteps of your rival Nimona, who by the start of the game is already one of the champions of the region. Welcome change. She is both competitive but friendly, driving the player to continue to be better as the game prefaces each encounter with her until the final battle, with her holding back to help you improve your skills. This questline is the bread and butter Pokemon experience. You're told there are 8 badges, and the game shows you the location of the gyms all over the region, which leads you to believe you can do them in any order you desire. And while this is technically true, it's an uphill battle. The world around you doesn't scale with the amount of progress the player has made. In short, the level 40 area will always be the level 40 area. The level 15 area will always be the level 15 area. There are some exceptions to this. I've noticed returning to some areas, there are some higher level evolutions of Pokemon spawning, but this does not change the landscape much. So, you might be thinking to yourself at this point, well fine, I'll just go catch a Pokemon in the level 40 area and fight the level 40 gym first, right? Problem solved. To this I'd say, not quite! Gyms are the only way of increasing the level cap at which Pokemon caught at a level will listen to you. So even if you're fighting in opposition with higher level Pokemon, the Pokemon caught outside of the cap will not listen to you until you have the correct amount of badges. This cap, however, does not apply if you catch a Pokemon below the cap and level it beyond that cap. All this in mind, there is more freedom in which order you can choose to fight the gyms. Just look at this wacky order that I chose. It just isn't quite what it could have been. But let's look at a fan game. Now here's the good stuff right here. My personal favorite Pokemon game, Pokemon Crystal Clear. In Crystal Clear, the player can fight gyms in any order desired. Blackthorn City first, then sail off to Cinnabar. The gyms use scale with the badges obtained, allowing for freedom and choice to be at the forefront, without all that red tape that Scarlet and Violet erect in order to impede the player's decisions. So with all that out of the way, what actually happens in the gym challenge anyway? Well, it goes something like this. You get to a town with a gym, you go to the gym, or near it in some cases. The gym will give you a mini-game you have to do. You do the mini-game, You fight the gym leader, you get the badge. Then a notable character from this questline says something about you being real impressive and you might just have what it takes to be champion. Sometimes the guests show up before the gym trial, sometimes after, sometimes both! This is where the core of your rival battles and development comes in. You do this process 8 times with no real differentiation. A real shame because Nemona is actually a joy to be around and probably my favorite rival in years. Once you've completed the 8 gyms, you're then told to head to the Pokemon League and take the test to become a champion. There's an actual quiz as well, which you can fail, by the way. Not that I did. This is someone else's gameplay. Moving on. Once passing, you fight the Elite Four. Initially, the 3rd member of the Elite Four, I thought the game was picking as the hardest gym leader on the quiz. However, it seems to not be the case. Instead, he's just the 3rd member of the Elite Four. It was cool at the time, though. After overcoming the Elite Four, you fight the president of the league and are awarded the rank of champion. From there, your final battle with Nemona takes place. It's a pretty enjoyable fight. The music is a nice remix of her standard theme. People gather around to watch 2 elite trainers duke it out. A strong character-led moment for the conclusion of this questline, with your player finally overcoming your rival as she goes all out. Next up is Starfall Street. In this questline, you're tasked by an elite hacker, Cassiopeia, to take down Team Star and their bases, scattered around the map. The school's headmaster, Henry Cavill, overhears this communication and disguises himself as a student to help you with this mission. So you go out into the world, assault their bases, beating a guard outside, then entering, using the new Let's Go mechanic. You battle all of Team Star. Once you beat 30 of their Pokemon in 10 minutes, their boss comes out. You beat their boss. The boss tells you some backstory about how they were bullied and how Team Star came to be. Superman comes in and tells them, "Yo, come back to school, dude, because school is like punk rock." You rinse and repeat this, gaining LP, this game's secondary currency, as payout, given to you by Penny, a girl you meet early on, which is being accosted by Team Star's grunts, and is totally not suspicious in any way at all. Finally, after doing this 5 times, you're challenged by Cassiopeia, saying, "Ah, surprise! I'm the leader of Team Star, and I wanted you to disband Team Star because they're bullies now." Cassiopeia tells you to meet them at the school's mid lane to 1v1. Once arriving, Cavill claims to be Cassiopeia. You battle, and he reveals it's not him, but a student, stating he just wanted to test your skills to be sure you can vanquish the final Team Star threat. From there, you're tasked to meet under the flagpole at 3 o'clock. Penny appears, revealing and shocking absolutely everyone, she's the leader of Team Star. Whoa! You battle, you win, and the other admins of Team Star tell Penny they missed her as she had been gone and was missing to them. To make up for their truancy and other school-related issues, they are tasked with turning their bases into training centers for the League. This translates to being able to refight the bases at a now harder difficulty for more LP. With this, Starfall Street concludes. The issues I have with this questline are how Team Star has no goal they're working towards. They just hold their base, await their big boss's return. They aren't out in the world looking for their boss. They don't go out and take towns or steal something from Silphco, look to utilize a legendary Pokemon for their goal. No, they just sit in their base and wait for you to slap them around. The second issue is that you don't see the genesis of Team Star. You're just told about events from presumably the recent past, about how Team Star came to be and its leader's role in it. How they were going to rise up against the Chads and Stacys that were keeping them down. You never experienced this firsthand. This big battle they had for the school has come and gone before you were ever even on the scene. It would have been nice if you could have seen these events unfold, spend some time with Team Star admins as they were students, and see the build-up which led to the war for the school, where they beat Gary and crowned themselves king. Lastly, Penny doesn't change. The player doesn't teach her through their actions that Team Star is wrong. By the time you're sent on this quest, her mind is made up. It's time for Team Star to fall! And she sets you loose on them to clean up her mess. A real shame, as much like Nimona, there could have been tons of time to flesh out the player's relationship with Penny, both in the proposed time of seeing the war firsthand, but also when fighting Team Star. This questline feels very, well, there needs to be an evil team, so here they are! Which is a shame, because when the admins come together at the end of the quest, their chemistry and interactions are quite enjoyable. Finally, we make it to Path of Legends. For this questline, you team up with Arven, who's on the hunt for massive Pokemon of legend, and a mysterious power that they wield. These Pokemon, much like Team Star in the gyms, are scattered throughout the world. Also like them, you can do them in any order that you desire, barring the aforementioned restrictions. Titans just sort of exist in the world. They just stand there and wait for you to walk up to them. Normally they're just a big version of a Pokemon that roams the overworld. No real explanation as to where they came from, why they're so big, or exploring the world to find them, or info, or any other of that pesky world-building lore. Can't have that here. No, sir. So, as the player, you run up to the Titan, just standing there, menacingly. Fight it. It runs away to eat some drugs. It eats the drugs. Arven shows up, helps you fight the totem, Titan. You win. You find its stash. You make a sandwich with the stash. Your cover legendary eats the drug-filled sandwich. It gains massive power from the high that it's on, and this gives you a new traversal ability. Pretty neat way to handle HM distribution. Going through this quest, your relationship with Arvid improves, and he reveals to you why it is that he's pursuing the Titan Pokemon. That is mother or father, depending on the version. Mine was the mother, and I'm going to stick with that one. Was the professor of that region, and with a book from her laboratory, he learned of the herbs which he believes could help his partner Pokemon, the Bostiff, who was injured so badly that potions and Pokemon centers couldn't help him. His hunch was correct. After the 5 Titans fall, his partner returns to perfect health. From here, the professor requests Arven bring you to her lab. The lab, long since abandoned, has a transmission saying to take the player to Area 0, where she is. But first, Arven wants a battle. From here, this questline ends. He says, to make it to Area 0, you'll need someone who's good with tech, which is Penny, and a top-tier battler, Nimona, requiring you to finish the other 2 questlines if you haven't already. This questline was probably the most interesting. I enjoyed the interactions with Arven, as he goes from standoffish and mysterious to a strong ally, and far more sure of himself. Much like the others, though, I would have liked to have spent more time with him in the game, exploring the habitat of the Titan with him, perhaps finding clues to reveal the whereabouts, instead of it just standing there on the map waiting. The False Dragon gets closest to this. However, all it has you do differently is interact with a Pokemon before this Titan appears. Not exactly rocket science. You might be thinking at this point, gosh, that's it? But no, the game pulls an Ashton Kutcher, and you're Demi Moore! There's one more quest line to go! The Way Home is the final questline you'll receive in this game. In this one, you, Arven, Penny, and Nimona all go to the mysterious Area 0, located at the bottom of the Paldea crater. Once here, the game really goes into a new gear. Koraidon is fearful of this area, setting up an immediate feeling of unease right off the bat. You are tasked by the professor to disable the locks scattered across the area to open up her lab. As you explore the area, your newly gathered allies talk amongst themselves about their thoughts on the area, what might be bothering Koraidon. They clash on ideals, discuss their upbringing, and just generally bond. This is what the game was missing. A sense of mystery around every corner. Character building. It really felt like you were watching this group of people become real friends over the course of this. Arven even reveals why he dislikes Koraidon. His mother's greatest achievement was creating a time machine, with which she brought Koraidon from the past to the present, and her maintaining it took center stage in her life. He felt neglected in the presence of it, so he grew to loathe it. As your crew traverses deeper into the crater, other Pokemon from the past appear. The professor reveals her desire to bring Pokemon from the past to the present and integrate them into society. Pokemon from the past, however, are brutal. So brutal, in fact, the professor reveals this cost the professor her life. She stepped in between a fight between your partner Pokemon and another Koraidon in a feud for territory in which yours lost, and that's why it feared returning to this area. The professor we've been working with all this time has been an AI created by the professor. Possessing her memories, the AI expresses to the player that it does not share the goal of its namesake and asks the player to shut down the machine. There is a catch though. Due to the AI being just a machine, it has programming built within it to prevent any shutdown of the time machine, and will lash out at the player. The battle for the safety of the present commences. The professor uses many of these savage Pokemon from the past, much of which were unseen to the player until this fight. Overcoming, the AI pulls one more gambit. It removes access to any Pokeball other than ones registered to the professor. This leaves just Koraidon. Koraidon must fight against the other and overcome its adversary. With the power of friendship, you do overcome. You and your newly formed friend group head home. This last 2-hour excursion from this game, some of the best content I've seen from Pokemon, and I really wish the whole game used this format. I've hinted at this in all the breakdowns of each quest line. This game could have used more character interaction with the player. Instead of relegating the plot to flashbacks, gym lobbies, or in a cave eating a sandwich filled with drugs, it should have been experienced by the player exploring the world like it is in the final chapter. I've been playing through a lot of Assassin's Creed Odyssey on stream. Follow me on my Twitch, by the way. I normally stream around 5 EST on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday. Depends. But I hope to see you there. Link in the description. But in Assassin's Creed, the story is largely told through missions which span whole branches of quest lines, having different ones all over the map. You'll interact with characters who are living lives outside of the quest of the main character. Sometimes you'll find people in trouble. Sometimes you'll find someone who is the trouble. Contrast that with Scarlet and Violet. All the major characters live their lives around you. They show up and stand somewhere waiting for you to do something. This makes the world feel very one-dimensional. Instead, it would have gained a ton from having better crafted its world around central hubs of the map beyond just cities, where one of your friends adventures with you for a bit and you do some quest lines with them in that area, where you could have stumbled across them already in the heat of things. Arvin could be neck-deep in a Titan Pokemon's mess, and you swoop in just at the right time to lend a hand. Or the player could have run into anyone. It doesn't have to be a main character, just someone who needs a trainer to help them. Instead, the story just happens in a very sterile and formulaic fashion. Team Star members stay in their spots. The Titans neatly stay in their area. Gym leaders wouldn't even dream of showing up to help you. They have streaming to do. This world and its narrative are disconnected, and only ever defies this in the last 2 hours of the game. But with how the plot is structured out of the way, let's get into how actually playing through it feels. This is, after all, a video game. Getting it out of the way really early, this is a Pokemon game after all. There's some real solid designs in this one. I definitely have my favorites, and some that are not quite my favorite. But, you know, nothing so offensive to me, at least that I saw. However, some of the regional Pokemon being classed as different Pokemon kind of pushes the limit for me. While they're clearly based on existing Pokemon, the idea that they're different in some way other than just being a regional Pokemon is a little far-fetched for me. The game does very little to change that idea. It should be no secret to anyone at this point that this game touts itself as an open-world game. After you leave your school, you're thrust into the world. With this change comes a change on other mechanics. Items now lay on the ground and respawn in the area. This made access to resources ever-present, and while this isn't inherently a negative, I was never hurting for cash to keep myself stocked. I always had tons of items, and it felt like a good reward for running around and exploring all over the world. In the inverse of this, however, is the world itself. While open in layout, complex caves like Mount Moon or Chargestone Cave are absent. Large buildings are also MIA. There's no Silphco or Team Galactic HQ equivalent. This change also leaves the game without much of, if any, overworld puzzles to engage with, meaning the traversal of the world is largely the same throughout the whole game. From start to finish, you're going to be using Koraidon. You're going to live by Koraidon, and you're going to die by Koraidon. And that's abundantly true. You'll get a movement ability from the Titans, obviously, to change this up a little bit, how easy it is to get to places. But ultimately, the traversal is always the same, with no delineation. I'd be remiss not to mention the animations in this game. While some are still rather rough, generally speaking, there are noticeable improvements. Your character's facial animations actually change, and he's not smiling psychotically at something terrible happening. But he does eat a little strange. Overworld animations especially have seen some improvements, but for every improvement, there are still some issues. Pokemon will largely stand in groups, just standing around. What if instead of this, a group of Medicham and Meditite were sparring, or maybe even feuding for territory with another fighting type in the area? Anything to make this world feel more alive. But speaking of not being alive, when you take out Pokemon, they now drop crafting items, which can be used to craft TMs. This system is alright. While I'd probably still prefer TMs to be infinite usage, this system makes it almost the same as if they were. Instead, my larger issue for this system is that they do not allow you to craft TMs freely. Instead, you either need to obtain the TM from somewhere or progress in the story to have your crafting list increased. Instead, I would have preferred a system closer to Birth by Sleep's melding system. Wait a minute. Did I just use Birth by Sleep as a positive example? Man, these frickin' Pokemon games are gonna be the end of me. Moving on, allowing a player to smash their slain Pokemon remains together to see what comes out of it would have incentivized the player to go out and find all kinds of materials writ large to see what it is they turn out. Another issue with lack of incentive in player exploration, there's not really much to do in this game in the way of side quests, which in my view is largely what keeps open world games flowing. The closest you get to a side quest are these random pikes that are scattered across the world, and they open corresponding gates. It's not exactly Skyrim here, folks. This issue once again goes to the point I just have to keep coming back to. This world is lacking a life of its own. It's like the player is some all-powerful deity, and every event is shaped exactly around you, and nothing else ever goes on. Heading back to a classic now, battling! Battling has sadly taken a massive backseat in this game. Due to how this game does not scale its world, trainer battles are now sparse and all optional in the overworld. When you do get into one, they're very slow-paced. Some of this is on performance in the game. I played an early build, so maybe that gets patched. But some of it is on strange design choices. Like, come on, man. Play the animation at the same time. You don't have to tell me it's paralyzed and then show me it's paralyzed. Just do both! Gyms also largely abscond from having trainers involved within them. Some of the later gyms had 3 or so trainers with teams of 2 or 3 Pokemon, largely keeping the prevalence of battles to a minimum. This game does so much to avoid battling, I largely stopped doing it, unless mandatory, about a quarter of the way into the game. You might be thinking at this point, gosh, how did you stay leveled then? Well, that brings me to your best friend for leveling, the Let's Go mechanic? Nah, silly! Terra Raid Battles! Terra Raid Battles are your best friend when it comes to leveling your Pokemon. You just run around the world, do tons of them, reap the XP rewards, and pump your Pokemon full of the equivalent of performance-enhancing drugs. No more battles, just hit A! It's that easy. Now to me, this is a big glaring issue, because raid battles are far and away the best way to level your Pokemon, bar none. But I enjoy battling, and it's a core of Pokemon, but Game Freak has left battles feeling rather dull. What is not dull, though, is this great raid battle theme, though. Listen to that! There are quite a few themes I enjoyed in this game, of which about 90% of them are rumored to be composed by Toby Fox. So good on you, Toby. You're killing it, brother. Here's a taste of some of my favorites. There are tons more that I love as well. These were just some of my favorites. But for every shining sun, there is a cloud. The gym and Elite Four themes in this game are probably some of my least favorite in the franchise. The gym theme tries to one-up Black and White, where the final Pokemon hypes up the music, but in this one, new elements are added as you progress through the whole fight. The issue is, the theme never really peaks in its build. Elements are added, but it never feels complete. Then, on the final Pokemon, it might as well be a different theme altogether. Not super. A mixed bag with this one. The map always being included on the HUD is nice. I just wish it were more useful. It largely shows very little actually going on in the world around you. It would have been nice if it showed a store icon without having to open up a larger map to break my flow. The larger map zoom settings are also rather annoying, as the max zoom out does not leave your cursor where it was when you zoom back in. Instead, it goes back to where it was before you zoomed out, making getting your bearings and using it to mark directions a bit tiresome. While on the topic of the larger map, it would have also been nice to have more info on what tier of raid battle this was, without having to go to it. Same for the area generally. Sure, this is Area 6, but what does that even mean? Going back to Assassin's Creed here for a bit. It uses the map to convey what level range an area is so that the player is not blindsided. It would have been nice if Pokemon did the same. Also, make sure to remember where all the Team Star bases are as well, because those don't get lasting icons unless zoomed all the way out. The final area also doesn't get a map, which, from a lore perspective, I can understand, but it just sits there at the entrance, and it's a bit distracting. I would have preferred static, or just removing it from the HUD in this area. Or, ideally, having a second map, like Kanto in Gen 2. Continuing on in the positivity, I noticed some miscellaneous balance changes and reworks through my playthrough. Recovery moves have largely had their PP cut, hitting Stall pretty hard. Scald is nowhere to be seen as a TM, removing it as the staple of Water-type Pokemon. Ice got a big buff through Hail being changed to Snow. Snow now boosts defenses on Ice types while it's active. Snow Warning also now procs Snow. Lastly, I noticed far less knockoff around. I'm led to believe it got the Scald treatment. Pour one out for the best moves in the game, boys. I'm sure there are other balance changes beyond that, but these are just the ones that I noticed. If you found some, be sure to leave a comment and let me know. Finally, onto one of the mechanics of all time. Terrestrializing. I used this mechanic maybe 4 or 5 times in my playthrough, and never really felt pushed to use it. I'm sure it has a spot in competitive play, but this game just never pushes you to use it, and most of the time the AI would use it to its detriment. Way to get rid of your stab there, friend. You might be thinking I forgot player customization, and my reply to that is, what customization? You have to wear your uniform for the whole time, so you're left balancing looks that complement the uniform instead of really being able to flesh out your character, which is a shame because there are a lot of customization options in the face of the character. I guess Game Freak just thought that was a fine trade-off. This game has a lot going on within it. Not all of it good. You might have noticed I used the terms "you're tasked to" or "you're told to" a lot in this video. It was not by mistake. I wanted to subtly emphasize that a lot of this game is simply being given orders, and the game tries to hide it by pretending you're seeking out your objectives in the open world, when really it's all just following orders and requests. You never stumble upon anything story relevant, ultimately leaving things far more linear than some older Pokemon games. In Scarlet, I went uninterrupted from one quest objective to the next, with nothing really breaking that flow. In older games, something would have stopped me from doing that. Team Rocket would have attacked the radio tower. The world would have felt like it was moving outside of your influence. This makes it a real shame that the last questline shows a better way of mixing story elements with exploring the world. While there is a task given to the player to unlock the lab, the player does stumble upon Paradox Pokemon. You're not ordered to find it. Your travels just happen to come across it. You don't have to go to a set story area to have the characters flesh themselves out. They just do that while you're adventuring. If Pokemon did more of that, I'd have no trouble saying it's back. But the best part is relegated to the last 2 hours of the game. That's a shame, and it's not enough to change the fact that this is a very mid-tier open world game, being carried by its namesake. But it's not all doom and gloom. They did do something right in this game, And if they do more of that and less of the rest next go around, there might be something to write home about. I just hope they can smooth out performance at their next go at it. Alright, you've made it to the end of the video. I appreciate you watching to this point. If you liked it, please leave a like, comment a sunglasses emoji to let me know you made it this far. Subscribe, share it all over, and I'll see you next time. Later!